In a land where giants walk like mountains and their voices roar like thunder, the people trembled in fear. A giant named Goliath challenged the bravest warriors to fight him, but none dared to step forward. For 40 days his voice echoed across the valleys, striking fear in every heart. Yet from a quiet village, a young shepherd boy named David heard the call, not with fear, but with courage burning bright in his chest. Armed only with a sling, 5 smooth stones, and unshakable faith, David chose to face the giant. This is the tale of how a small boy's courage and belief overcame a giant's strength, teaching us that true power lies in the heart and spirit. So grab your popcorn, sit back, and get ready for one of the most powerful stories you've ever heard. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button to support more inspiring stories like this one. Long ago, in the land of the ancient hills and golden plains, there was a kingdom called Israel. The people of Israel lived in peace, tending their flocks and fields, singing songs under the wide sky. But peace is often like the calm before the storm. Far away, beyond the valley and the river, a fierce enemy stirred a giant named Goliath. Goliath was no ordinary man. He was tall as the tallest tree, strong as the mighty baobab, and his voice thundered like the great rains during the wet season. Every morning and evening, he would step onto the battlefield and shout to the people of Israel, "Come out and fight me. Who will face me? Who dares challenge the giant?" For 40 days he mocked the soldiers of Israel. Their warriors were brave, but when they saw Goliath's shadow stretch across the ground, their courage melted like morning mist under the sun. No one dared to face him, for he was a giant whose footsteps shook the earth and whose spear could fell a man with one throw. But in a quiet village far from the noise of war lived a young boy named David. David was the youngest son of Jesse, a shepherd who cared for his sheep as tenderly as a mother cares for her child. David's days were spent among the hills, with his sling in hand and a heart full of songs and stories. While the soldiers trembled before the giant, David heard the tales of Goliath's challenge. But rather than fear, David felt a spark, a small flame of courage that would soon grow into a roaring fire. The story was just beginning. The sun had barely risen over the hills when David's father, Jesse, called him. "David, my son," he said, "take these fresh loaves of bread and some cheese to your brothers who fight with King Saul's army. The battle is near, and the men need food to keep their strength." David took the basket, tied his sling to his belt, and set off through the winding paths between rocky cliffs and whispering trees. As he walked, he heard the distant sound of war drums pounding like thunder in the sky. His heart beat faster, not with fear, but with a growing determination. When David reached the camp, he found his brothers and the soldiers talking nervously about the giant who challenged them. "Goliath is a mountain of a man," said one soldier. "No one can stand before him." David looked at his brothers, tall and strong like mighty warriors, yet their eyes were filled with worry. "Why does no one answer the giant?" David asked. "Is there no one brave enough to defend our people?" His brothers scoffed. "You are only a boy, David. This is no place for shepherds." But David was not discouraged. He thought of his own days protecting his father's sheep from hungry lions and bears. "When a lion or bear comes to my sheep," he said quietly, "I do not run away. I fight to protect them. How much more should I protect the people of Israel?" Word of David's courage began to spread through the camp. Some laughed, others shook their heads, but deep inside a hope began to grow. Perhaps, just perhaps, a shepherd boy had the heart to face the mighty giant. The winds of change were blowing. In the cool shade of the acacia trees, David sat beside the campfire, his eyes bright with a light that no fear could dim. Around him, the soldiers murmured about Goliath's size and strength, but David's thoughts were far away, with his sheep on the rolling hills. He remembered the day a fierce lion had crept near his father's flock. While the shepherds fled, David had run toward the beast, sling in hand. With steady hands and a clear heart, he had struck the lion on the head, and the beast had fallen. The same had happened with the hungry bear that threatened his sheep another time. Why should this giant be any different? David whispered to himself. That night, as stars twinkled like eyes of ancient ancestors watching over the world, David knelt down and prayed to the God of his fathers. Great Spirit of my people, guide my hands and my heart. Give me the strength to protect my brothers and my land. Let your power be with me, for I walk not with sword or shield, but with faith. His prayer was carried on the gentle night breeze, touching the ears of all who slept in the camp. The next morning, as the sun climbed high and Goliath's roar shook the valley, David stood before King Saul himself. The king, wrapped in heavy armor that gleamed in the sunlight, looked at the boy with surprise. "You are but a shepherd, young David," Saul said. "How can you face this giant who has terrified our warriors?" David smiled, steady and sure. "I have protected my father's sheep from lions and bears with only my sling and faith. The same God who saved me from them will save me from this giant." Saul studied the boy's face, eyes bright, heart brave. With a heavy sigh, the king agreed and said, "Then go, with the blessing of the people and the God of Israel." And so David stepped onto the field of battle, carrying no sword, no shield, only his sling, 5 smooth stones, and an unshakable faith. The battlefield lay wide and open, stretching like a great cloth woven with dust and sunlight. On one side stood the warriors of Israel, their hearts heavy with doubt and fear. On the other side, the Philistine army boomed with confidence, their giant Goliath towering above them like a mountain that touched the sky. David walked quietly through the camp, his steps light but firm. He felt the eyes of many warriors upon him, some curious, some doubtful, and others filled with hope. The air was thick with tension, like the moments before a great storm. Goliath appeared again, his voice booming across the valley. "Who is this boy who dares to challenge me? Am I a dog that you send a child to fight?" David did not flinch. He answered with a voice steady as the rivers flow, "You come against me with sword and spear, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." The giant laughed, a sound like thunder rolling down the mountains. "Come, and I will feed your flesh to the birds and wild beasts." But David's heart was not troubled. He reached into his bag and took out 5 smooth stones from the riverbed, each one a gift from the earth itself. He placed one in his sling, a simple tool he had used since childhood to guard his sheep. The soldiers watched in silence as the boy stepped forward to meet the giant. The ground beneath seemed to hold its breath. David swung his sling with practiced ease, the stone flying through the air like a shooting star. The giant roared in surprise as the stone struck his forehead with a mighty crack. With a heavy thud, Goliath fell to the ground, the earth trembling at his fall. The valley erupted in cheers, the sound rising like a great wave of hope and victory. David had done what no one else dared. The shepherd boy had faced the giant and won, not with armor or sword, but with faith, courage, and a steady hand. The valley still echoed with the cheers of the Israelite soldiers, their voices rising like thunder after the giant fell. David stood tall, dust settling on his clothes, his heart steady and strong. The great giant Goliath lay motionless on the ground, defeated not by strength alone, but by the power of faith and courage. The soldiers rushed forward, their faces alight with wonder and joy. They lifted David onto their shoulders, celebrating the boy who had done what mighty warriors could not. "David, David, you have saved us all," they shouted. King Saul approached, his eyes filled with pride and amazement. "You have done a great thing, young shepherd," he said. "Your faith and bravery have brought victory to Israel." But David's heart was humble. "It was not by my strength alone," he said softly, "but by the Lord who watched over me. It is He who gave me courage when others were afraid." The people of Israel rejoiced, songs and drums filling the air. From that day on, David was no longer just a shepherd boy. He was a symbol of hope, proof that even the smallest among us can overcome great challenges when we trust in something greater than ourselves. As the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky with colors of fire and gold, David returned to his father's home. His brothers looked at him with new respect, and the village buzzed with stories of the boy who faced a giant and won. But David knew this was only the beginning. The path ahead would have many trials, and his faith would be tested in ways he could not yet imagine. For now, though, the song was sweet, and the victory was theirs. News of David's victory spread like wildfire across the land of Israel. The people sang songs of the brave shepherd boy who had defeated the giant, and his name became known far and wide. Even the king's court could not stop speaking about David's courage and the miracle of the battle. But not all hearts were joyful. In the palace, a shadow grew behind the celebrations. King Saul, once proud and strong, began to feel a strange unease. He watched as the people's cheers grew louder for David, and his heart tightened with worry. "Who is this young boy that the people praise so much?" Saul asked his servants. "Will he take my crown? Will he grow stronger than I?" The king's mind was a storm of jealousy and fear. He remembered the words of the prophets who had whispered that a new leader would rise from among the people. Now he wondered if David was that leader. David himself sensed the change. Though still humble and kind, he saw the glances of suspicion and heard the whispers in the halls. But his heart did not waver. He knew his strength came not from power or titles, but from the God who had protected him. In the fields, as he tended his sheep, David prayed for wisdom and patience. "Great Spirit," he whispered, "guide my steps and keep my heart pure. Let me serve with kindness and courage, even when shadows fall." And so, even as the shadow of jealousy began to grow, David's light shone brighter, a beacon of hope in a world full of doubt. Days passed quietly in the kingdom, but beneath the calm, the air hummed with danger. King Saul's jealousy grew like a creeping vine, twisting around his heart and mind. He began to see David not as a boy who saved the people, but as a threat to his throne. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, Saul summoned David to his palace. The great hall was filled with noblemen and soldiers, their faces a mixture of curiosity and unease. David entered, humble yet steady, his eyes clear and strong. "David," Saul said, his voice heavy, "you have done well for Israel. But now I offer you a place among my warriors. Wear my armor and stand with me against our enemies." David looked at the heavy armor, shining helmet, sword, and shield, and then at himself, a simple shepherd boy. "Your Majesty," he said kindly, "I cannot walk in armor that is not mine. I am used to my sling and the stones from the riverbed. They have protected me before, and I trust they will protect me now." Saul nodded, though worry flickered in his eyes. David's refusal made the king uneasy, but also showed his faith and courage. As David left the palace that night, shadows followed him. Saul's heart danced with fear and anger, and he began to plan how to keep David from growing stronger in the eyes of the people. But David moved forward with steady steps, knowing that true power was not in armor or weapons, but in faith and the courage to face what comes. Got it. From now on, each chapter will be 350 words or more, packed with detail and rich storytelling. Here's Chapter 8. Chapter 8. The whispering shadows, the days grew longer, but the tension in the kingdom grew heavier. King Saul's heart had become a battlefield, torn between respect for David's bravery and the gnawing fear that his own reign was in danger. The whispers in the palace corridors spread like wildfire, twisting truths and stirring doubts. David, still humble and kind, continued to serve with loyalty. But everywhere he went, he could feel the eyes of those around him, some filled with admiration, others with envy or suspicion. The giant had fallen, but a new giant of jealousy now stood tall in the king's heart. One evening, under the silver light of the moon, David sat alone outside the palace walls. The cool breeze carried the songs of crickets and the distant call of the night birds. His mind wandered to the hills and flocks he loved, to the days when his greatest worry was protecting his sheep from the wild. Suddenly, footsteps approached, soft and careful. It was Jonathan, King Saul's son, and David's closest friend. "David," Jonathan whispered, "my father's heart is heavy and dark. He fears you, but I see the light you carry. We must find a way to protect you." David smiled faintly. "Jonathan, true friendship is rare like the baobab's fruit. I will trust in our bond and in the God who watches over us both." Jonathan nodded, placing a strong hand on David's shoulder. "You are not alone, brother. Together we will face whatever shadows come." But shadows were already gathering. Saul's plans grew darker, weaving traps like thorny vines around David's path. The boy who had faced a giant now had to face a king's jealousy, a test far greater and more dangerous. David looked up at the stars, whispering a prayer for courage. The road ahead was uncertain, but his faith was firm. The story of the shepherd boy was far from over. In the heart of the kingdom, amidst the swirling winds of change, the friendship between David and Jonathan grew stronger, a bond forged in trust and loyalty. While the palace brimmed with suspicion and fear, these two young men stood as brothers, their spirits intertwined like the roots of the mighty Iroko tree. Jonathan, son of King Saul, was a warrior of great skill and honor. Though bound by duty to his father, his heart saw beyond the throne's shadow and recognized the light within David. One afternoon, beneath the shade of an ancient fig tree, Jonathan met with David to share his concerns. "David," Jonathan said softly, "my father's fear blinds him. He sees you as a threat, yet you have done nothing but bring hope and courage to our people. We must protect you." David nodded, his eyes steady. "I trust you, Jonathan, but how can we stand against the fear that grips a king's heart. Jonathan smiled gently, with honesty and friendship. I promise to stand by your side, no matter what comes. Together we are stronger than any shadow. Their promise was sealed with a handshake firm and unyielding. From that day, Jonathan became David's shield in the palace, a whisperer of truth and a guardian against danger. But the king's jealousy was like a creeping fog, thick and relentless. Saul's advisors whispered poisonous words, urging him to act against David. Spies watched David's every move, waiting for a chance to strike. Yet David did not waver. In the quiet moments before dawn, he would kneel and pray, asking for guidance and strength. His heart remained rooted in faith, the same faith that had brought him courage on the battlefield against the giant. One night, Jonathan warned David of the growing danger. "You must be careful, my friend. The king's anger is a storm that could break at any moment." David smiled with quiet determination. "I will trust in the Lord's protection and the bond we share. No darkness can snuff out the light that shines within." Their friendship was a beacon, a reminder that even in times of fear, loyalty and love can light the way. The sun rose bright over the kingdom, but beneath its golden light, dark plans were taking shape. King Saul's heart, heavy with jealousy, grew darker with every passing day. The fear that David might one day take his throne twisted his thoughts, turning friend against friend and brother against brother. Saul called his advisors close, his voice low but filled with anger. "This boy, David, has won the hearts of the people. His fame grows with every breath. We must find a way to stop him before it is too late." The advisors whispered and nodded, their faces hidden behind masks of loyalty but filled with cunning. They spoke of traps and tricks, of lies and shadows. Saul's plan was clear. David must be caught in a snare from which he cannot escape. Meanwhile, David sensed the growing danger. The eyes that once watched with admiration now followed him with suspicion. The palace halls, once filled with friendly voices, echoed with silence or whispered warnings. One evening, as David walked through the quiet garden, he noticed a strange stillness. The birds had stopped singing, and the breeze held its breath. He felt the weight of unseen eyes, waiting to strike. Yet David's heart was steady. He remembered the sling in his hand, the stones from the river, and the God who had never failed him. No matter the trap, no matter the shadow, he would face it with courage. Jonathan, ever faithful, approached David in secret. "The king's anger grows," he warned softly. "Be careful, for the path ahead is filled with danger." David nodded, his gaze firm. "I will trust in the Lord's protection and in the friendship that shields me." That night, under the blanket of stars, David prayed for strength and wisdom. The trap was closing, but his spirit was free. The battle was no longer just against giants of flesh, but giants of fear and jealousy. And David was ready. The moon hung high and silver in the night sky, casting gentle light over the quiet kingdom. But beneath the peaceful glow, danger whispered its secrets on the wind. David moved cautiously, his senses sharp as the eyes of the hawk hunting in the dark. The palace was a maze of shadows and secrets. Word had come from trusted friends that King Saul's anger was reaching its peak, and those loyal to the king were plotting to capture David. The young shepherd knew that every step could bring him closer to a trap. That evening, as David passed through the palace gardens, a familiar figure appeared from the shadows. Jonathan. His face was serious, eyes filled with worry. "David," Jonathan said softly, The king's heart is troubled. His anger grows like a wildfire that cannot be tamed. You must be careful, for the trap is near. David's eyes met Jonathan's. I thank you, my brother, for your warning and your friendship, but I will not run away. I will face whatever comes with the courage God has given me. Jonathan clasped David's hand firmly. Then you shall not face it alone. I will stand with you, even if the world turns against you. The two friends shared a silent vow beneath the stars. Their bond was a shield against the darkness creeping through the palace halls. As the night deepened, David found a quiet place to pray. His heart was calm despite the storm swirling around him. Lord, he whispered, guide my path and protect me from those who seek to harm me. Strengthen my spirit to walk through this valley of shadows. The winds carried his prayer beyond the walls of the palace, reaching the ears of those who cared for him. The trap was set, but David's spirit was ready, for in faith and friendship he had found a power stronger than fear. And so the silent warning was heard, and the story continued, a tale of courage in the face of danger. The dawn broke gently over the kingdom, painting the sky with strokes of pink and gold. But for David, the morning brought no peace. The trap set by King Saul's men was closing in fast, and every step forward felt like walking on a blade's edge. Word had reached David through secret messengers' whispers of soldiers lying in wait, ready to seize him. The palace, once a place of refuge, had become a prison without walls. But David was no ordinary boy. His heart beat with the rhythm of the hills and the courage of the shepherd who had faced lions and bears. He knew the land better than anyone, and he trusted the God who had never failed him. That night, with the moon hidden behind thick clouds, David slipped silently from the palace. His footsteps were as light as the falling leaves, and his eyes sharp like the eagle's. He moved through secret paths, weaving between trees and shadows, guided by the stars above. Behind him the palace stirred with confusion. Soldiers searched the halls, their voices loud but uncertain. The king's rage was a fire burning bright, but David was already beyond its reach. As he reached the edge of the forest, David paused. His heart swelled with both sadness and hope. He was leaving behind friends, family, and the life he had known. Yet ahead was a journey into the unknown, a path that would test his faith and courage like never before. Before stepping into the darkness, David knelt and prayed, Great Spirit, guide my feet and shield my heart. Let your light lead me through the shadows. I will walk this path with trust, knowing you walk beside me. The forest seemed to breathe with life around him, the rustling leaves, the whispering wind, and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. It was a new beginning. David disappeared into the night, a boy no longer just a shepherd, but a warrior of faith, courage, and destiny. The forest welcomed David with a cool, shadowed embrace. Tall trees stretched their limbs high into the sky, their leaves whispering ancient secrets in the breeze. The wilderness was both friend and foe, full of hidden dangers and mysterious beauty. David moved cautiously but confidently, his heart steady, despite the loneliness that crept in. The stars above were his only guide, twinkling like the eyes of his ancestors watching over him. Every step he took was a lesson in patience and faith. Days passed in quiet rhythm. David hunted for food, drank from clear streams, and listened to the songs of birds and the rustle of animals in the underbrush. The wilderness tested him, but it also taught him strength. One evening, as he rested beneath a baobab tree, David thought of his family and friends. He missed them deeply, but he knew that this journey was a path he had to walk alone, a test of spirit and courage. In the stillness of the night, David knelt in prayer. "Great Spirit," he whispered, "I am small among these towering trees, but my heart is strong. Teach me to walk your path, even when the way is dark. Give me courage to face what comes and wisdom to know your will." Suddenly a sound broke the silence, the distant howl of a wild animal. David's heart quickened, but he did not panic. Years of tending sheep had prepared him for the dangers of the wild. He gathered stones and set traps, using every skill he had learned. The wilderness was not just a place of trial. It was a school where he honed his courage and faith. Though far from the palace and the people he loved, David's spirit grew stronger each day. He was becoming not just a shepherd, but a leader, a man shaped by the winds and shadows of the wilderness. And so, under the watchful eyes of the stars, David's journey continued, a story of growth, faith, and the power of the human heart. After many days and nights in the wilderness, David felt a stirring deep within his heart, a call to return to his people. The forests and hills had shaped him, teaching lessons of courage, patience, and faith. But now the time had come to face the world he had left behind. With steady steps, David made his way back toward the kingdom. The journey was long, and the memories of the palace's shadows weighed heavy on his mind. Yet his spirit was strong, like the mighty elephant that walks with surety through the savannah. As David approached the borders of his homeland, whispers began to spread among the people. The boy who once fled was now a man of quiet strength, whose heart burned with the fire of faith. In the villages, children told stories of David's courage. Elders nodded in approval, and even the soldiers spoke his name with respect. The land itself seemed to welcome him back, the rivers sparkling brighter, and the trees standing taller. David's brothers greeted him with new eyes, their earlier doubts replaced by admiration. "You have changed," they said. "You carry the spirit of a true leader." But David remained humble. "It is not by my strength alone," he replied, "but by the God who walks with me." Word reached King Saul, who listened with a heart both troubled and intrigued. The boy he once saw as a threat had grown into a man who inspired hope and unity. David's return was not just a homecoming, it was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where courage and faith would shape the fate of the kingdom. As the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky with colors of hope, David looked toward the future. The giant had fallen, the wilderness had tested him, and the road ahead was filled with promise. But he knew that the greatest battles were yet to come. The time had come for David to face not just the shadows outside, but the battles within. His journey from shepherd boy to warrior was nearly complete, but the greatest test awaited, becoming a leader worthy of his people and the God he served. King Saul's jealousy had not faded, but the people's faith in David grew stronger with each passing day. The kingdom stood at a crossroads, torn between fear and hope, darkness and light. David knew that to lead was to serve, to be humble even in power, and to walk with courage when the path is hard. He gathered the elders, warriors, and villagers beneath the great baobab tree, the same tree where many tales had been told and wisdom shared. "My brothers and sisters," David spoke with a voice steady and full of warmth, "our land has known fear and struggle, but it has also known hope. I come not to take the throne by force, but to serve the people with a heart full of faith and courage. The crowd listened, their eyes shining with trust and hope. David's words were like rain on dry earth, filling their hearts with new life. King Saul, watching from afar, saw the love the people had for David. His anger softened, replaced by a deep respect for the boy who had become a man. In time, Saul and David met, not as enemies, but as two men bound by a shared love for their people. Saul blessed David's rise, and the kingdom united under a leader who walked humbly with his God. David's story became legend, a tale told by firesides, a song sung by children, and a lesson for all who hear it, that true strength comes not from size or sword, but from faith, courage, and a humble heart. And so the shepherd boy who faced a giant became a king who ruled with wisdom and love, forever remembered in the hearts of his people. The end was just a new beginning.
Subscribe for more content.